Hello, everyone, and welcome to the final session of the W North Revive Virtual Summit presented by Indeed.com. I'm Eva Kubikova, Global Director of Membership and Marketing at W North, and I am thrilled to welcome you all to be here and learn from our two incredible speakers today, Neha Prasad-Kovach and Esther Wojcicki. Today's session is possible thanks to our global partnership with Indeed.com, and together we already brought you 4 value-packed sessions. All sessions are now available as replays, either inside our membership or for the next 2 weeks on our website. We will be in touch to share details of all 5 replays shortly after today's event. For those of you who are new to W North is a global organization supporting women who are aiming for or already on a senior executive leadership track and scaling entrepreneurs. The Members Club at W North connects you with accomplished and driven leaders and grants you access to exclusive experiences, unique events, and leadership coaching to guide you to your leadership destination. I'm excited to share that we are opening the doors to the Members Club today, starting with our waitlist. And now, without further ado, I am very pleased to turn it over to Neha Prasad-Kovach, our W North member and VP of Customer Experience at a leading luxurious retail brand. She is a purpose-driven product leader with 14 plus years of extensive Canadian and global experience, leveraging her people and thought leadership. But before all that, Neha is a mom, a wife, a daughter, and a sister, and a feminist and change maker. Neha, welcome and thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Eva. It's a pleasure.
Amazing.
Thank you. With that, I would love to welcome Esther Wojcicki, who is an author of How to Raise Successful People. Esther is a leading American educator, generalist, and a mother, leader in blending learning and the integration of technology into education. She's the founder of Media Arts program at Palo Alto High School, where she built a journalism program for a small group of 20 students that has now bubbled up into 800 students. She's also a co-founder for Track.app, which is a website that provides resources for kids to feel empowered and happy. She's also a co-founder for GoSesh.com, which is a parenting website that provides resources for parents for children's ages 0 to 5. For children's regulation, potty training, and just sort of, when parents are in the thick of it all. Esther has also been intimately involved with Google and Google Edu since its inception, and she was one of the leaders in actually setting up the Google Teacher Academy and remains a guiding force. Please join me in welcoming Esther in our conversation today.
Thank you so much for including me, and I'm excited to be here with all the people online, and maybe sometime in the future we can all be in person.
That'd be lovely.
Yeah, wouldn't it?
We'll get right into our conversation because I think people are here to hear you talk, Esther, today. And so let's start talking about the concept of trick, the trick concept that you write about in your book, and the importance of trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness in context of raising the next generation of our leaders. So maybe I'll pass it over to you to talk a little bit about that.
Thank you. So I wrote a book that came out in 2020, and then again, different versions of it. There's audio version and Kindle and paperback, and it all came out in 2021. So it's available on Amazon or wherever you are in the world. It's in 28 languages. So I'm very happy about that because I think that kids all over the world are pretty much the same in the sense that they all need what I came up with as an acronym to help you remember what they need. It's called TRICK. And TRICK stands for trust, respect, independence, collaboration, and kindness. And my students actually helped me come up with what it was I was doing in class, because sometimes, you do things that you don't even know what you're doing, and it all seems to work. And the question is like, God, why did it work? Or why didn't it work? And so they helped me. And one of the things they said, and one of the reasons that my class became so popular, is because they said I trusted them. And I remember thinking that was kind of a crazy answer. Don't all teachers trust the kids? And and then I thought, oh, they probably just got it wrong. I'll try another group. So I asked another group of kids, and they said the same thing, and they hadn't been in collaboration at all with the other group. And so then I thought, wow, there must be something to this trust thing that I'm doing that I don't even know that I'm doing that seems to be attracting all of them. And it turns out that I was really trusting them to make a lot of decisions themselves, giving them more opportunities in class to be independent learners, giving them opportunities to collaborate with their friends. And so when I was writing this book, I came up with this acronym to help everybody that read the book to remember what they read. Because we all read books and then we like, oh my God, what was that book about? I can't even remember. So hopefully this will help you remember. And so I trusted them, and trust in a classroom means basically that you trust students to come up with their own idea, for example, to write about, as opposed to, giving them 4 choices and saying, pick one of the 4. I don't think that's a real option. I think that that's just too programmed of an option, because the whole world, I mean, you can write about anything you want to write about. It's a lot of stuff. And also I trusted them in a journalism program, for example, since I'm the advisor, I trusted them to get the information right, because, they're publishing stories about people that are alive and living and doing things in our community. And I don't want them to hurt any of those people or their reputation. So even if it's a controversial story, they need to get both sides. They need to get all the information right, and they need to write it up correctly. And I was dealing with 14 to 20-year-olds. And that was really, that was a situation where I had to trust them. And if you just think about it, you as a parent, you're sending your 14 or 15-year-old out to interview someone in the community and then write it up. I would say most parents would be very nervous. They probably like, oh my God, they can't do it. I better check it a million times. But so that's where the kind of trust came in, because these publications grew. I trusted the kids to edit each other's stories. I trusted them to do a good layout and design. Every single aspect of publication, I had to trust them. And then in classes where it wasn't a publication, like math, for example, I trusted them to work with each other to come up with an answer and to help the other person who did not understand. And at home, as a mom for my 3 daughters, I gave my children a lot of responsibility very early on. And that kind of responsibility were things like letting them make their own breakfast, or letting them pack their own lunch. Back in the day when they went to school, there was no food in the school, okay? So you had to pack a lunch. And so they learned to pack their own lunch. They learned, I let them ride their bikes to the neighborhood store. The store was about a mile away. And they felt very empowered because they could ride their bike there. And this was a dime store that they always wanted to go to. And you can imagine this was a big deal. They got to take their allowance and go to the dime store and buy what they wanted. So that's trust. And that just gives you a few ideas. I wrote a blog, by the way, for CNBC last weekend that trended #1 in the country. So you might want to look that up, and it has a lot of ideas. And there's also a little video that goes with the blog. And then for respect really means just listening. When kids tell you what they want to tell you, most parents are just like too busy. It's like, I'm sorry, I have no time. I have to do this, or I'm on the phone, or I have to do something else. And that is actually really a turnoff to kids, because if they can't talk to you, they don't feel respected. And sometimes at dinner, you don't even listen because you're busy talking to somebody else, or I'm sorry to say, parents are really bad models. They're on their phone. It's like, oh my God, I just got this phone call, it's so important. And they just like dash off. And so respect, give them a times when you're actually going to listen completely, both ears, both eyes,
Be present.
and be present. And so that makes a big difference. Independence. I gave my daughters a lot of independence early on, as I mentioned. And by the time they were in high school, they were pretty much doing everything for themselves. They all went to work. I made them get a job. I thought, this is an opportunity to learn about the real world. They all got a job at the age of 16. That was the earliest you could work in the state of California. And I mean, Susan worked as a hostess in a restaurant. They all had some kind of a job that was like a service job, babysitting, a hostess, collecting the mail for people that were gone on vacation. There were a whole series of things that they all did. And then that felt very independent. Oh, I opened a checking account for them also at 16. So they knew how to handle their own money, hopefully. And then the C in the trick formula is collaboration. Instead of always telling your kids what to do, why don't you get them to come up with some ideas of their own and collaborate on what you're going to do?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, what are we doing this weekend? Well, usually the parents decide what you're doing this weekend and the kids are coming along. And like, how about letting the kids decide what you're going to do and the parents come along? I mean, that would be a real shock for most families.
Yeah.
But, it made them understand that, they also have good ideas and they can control their own lives. I don't always have to tell them what to do. And then the last one, kindness. If you want your kids to be kind, you have to model it yourself. And if you're nasty, they're going to be nasty because they're going to copy you. So kids do what they see you do, not what you tell them what to do. So, if you tell them not to speed on the freeway when they get their driver's license and they see you speeding all the time, trust me, they are not going to be slow drivers. So
Absolutely.
And also if you're always disobeying the parking rules, anything that you do that you don't want them to do, well, don't do it.
Exactly.
just do something else.
Everything that you said about
model after you.
Exactly.
Sorry.
Everything that you've said about the trick concept, I think, has been it ladders up to making little people feel like they have the autonomy to do the things that they want to do and to be able to help inform and foster, responsibility, collaboration, so that as they grow into adults, they become quite resilient when it comes to success. And I think that goes to show a little bit around how your children, and maybe talk a little bit about how your children just flourished with the trick concepts, and what were the changes that you saw that came out of sort of adolescence into them being adults. Like, do they still carry the trick concept, and do they carry that forward with their sort of, principles and philosophy in life?
They carry it forward with their own kids. And I never said anything. People tend to parent the way they were parented.
Yeah.
So if you don't like the way you were parented, then you need to put it on the conscious level, not the subconscious, because subconscious, you're going to just do the same thing that your parents did because it's built in there.
Yeah.
And so my kids, it's amazing to see the respect my kids have for their kids. And those kids are all doing really well. And we're all pretty happy. So what else can I say?
Yeah, and your kids are doing really well. I mean, as we evolve in our conversation, I would love for you to draw some parallels between the trick concept and parenthood and leadership. How would you say those two sort of come together? And obviously, there's a lot of the same concepts that apply for both, but how would you articulate that for those that are tuned in today?
So I would say in the corporate world, and when you're working in even a small company, the trick concept works to improve employee sense of self. They feel much better. They produce much more effectively. They're happier. Happy employees are the ones that are the most productive.
Mm-hmm.
If these people are going to work at your company, or if you are going to work at a company where you're miserable, you're not going to be very productive. Miserable people are not productive. Everyone wants to be respected. Everyone. And if you think people in the company aren't listening to you, if you're treated in a way that you feel disrespected, I'm telling you, you might stick to the job because you need the money, but you're not productive. And so leaders, managers, they need to know that. They need to know that everyone needs to feel included and respected and trusted. And so this philosophy is alive and well at Google, by the way. Google does a great job of helping employees feel like they're part of a team. If they have a problem, if something doesn't go well, they just redo it, they revise, they work together to support each other. And I'm convinced that that's one of the reasons that Google did so well. And another company that also employs the same philosophy is Salesforce. Did you ever notice that Salesforce just galloped on way ahead of Oracle? And the question is like, why? What happened? And they have a great employee program. They take really good care of their employees. They make them feel included. They have a whole program focused on, inclusion. And Adobe does the same thing. So these are the three companies I'm familiar with, I've worked with, and so I know that they do that. And they're all really successful companies. And so if you have a small company, even if you have like 5 employees, no matter how big or small it is, people just need to feel included and respected. And they need to be given independence. If you want them to be creative, you can't tell them what to do all the time because then they can't be creative. It goes against any kind of common sense. So I'm thinking about it. I actually have a person I'm going to work with, I think, writing a book, which is Trick in Corporations, Trick in the Work World.
That's amazing. And I think that the philosophies absolutely apply. And when you see leaders leading in with the trick concept, to your point around the making people feel valued, but also the concept of autonomy and leaving people to trust to deliver on what it is that you're asking them to deliver on is quite a powerful, basic, but powerful notion that I think a lot of companies sort of lose sight of.
So I also want to mention that Trick works really well in your personal relationships.
I can see that.
That's really important. So you need to trust and respect your spouse or your partner. And I think the first thing that tends to disappear in relationships that are crumbling is respect. People don't listen to each other. And then they're like suspicious. And then they don't trust them. And so the whole thing just breaks down. So Trick works in your personal life, with your kids, in corporations. I think it's part of life. It makes life work much better.
Sounds like pretty foundational. And given your history, Esther, like we know that you've gone through transition when it comes to being a mother, transitioning back into workforce. And now with the economy and the way things have been going, we see companies cutting their workforce. Could you talk a little bit around how did you manage the transition of leaving a senior executive position and then navigating the job search?
So I think a lot of people are just tired of doing their job and they're resigning and then like, I'm going to find another job or I'm going to do it myself or something to that effect. So there's a company out there called Skyhive, and I recommend you to just go on their website and check it out because they have something called a skills passport. You fill out the skills passport to know what your skills are, and then they give you suggestions for other jobs that might be great for you to take without even doing any more training. Because sometimes you have skills you don't even know about. And so teachers have a lot more skills than they know they have. Even being a mother, I mean, you can organize a lot of stuff and you know how to deal with chaos. So, I mean, I would just recommend that as one way. Also, I say, you need to believe in yourself. Most people have a hard time believing in themselves because of the school system. The school system trained you to get the right answer. And if you didn't get the right answer, then you didn't do well.
Mm-hmm.
And honestly, there are no right answers in life. And so people feel hesitant to make a leap. And so what I'm saying is that, you're smarter than you think. And if you just think about how you feel about yourself and how that impacts your behavior, you might want to think again about believing in yourself. So Ford, I think it was Thomas Ford, the creator of the Ford. Of course, we all know what the Ford car is. He said, if you think you can, or if you think you can't, you're going to be right in either case.
Mm-hmm.
If you think you can. And if you think you can't, you can't. So what you think matters. So that's one thing that I think people in a position of transition or moving to another position, that you need to believe in yourself and say to yourself, I can do this.
Yeah.
And that is probably the most important thing I can get across today, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think it's ditching the imposter syndrome and always the self-doubt that's constantly inside of us. And that, to your point, it's the system that placed it there. It was you weren't born with it. It's not an innate part of your DNA. So I love what you said around just believing in the fact, and sort of positive mindset will allow you to break down barriers that kind of exist in ourselves that can take down those resistances when it comes to sort of looking for the next opportunity or searching for what it is that you can do beyond what you do today.
Yes, I think that's the most important thing. You need to believe in yourself. And so if you fail after you first believe in yourself, don't get mad at yourself.
Be kind to yourself. Right?
Yes, be kind to yourself. Think of the trick philosophy for yourself.
Yeah, that applies. I love that. I love that. You've now kind of talked about the trick philosophy and it with parenting, with leadership, with relationships, and that now we're going down to trick being a relationship application to yourself and showing kindness to yourself, how you respect yourself, your mind, your mindset, and your capabilities. I love that integration of that concept and the application of it in so many different ways. There's a couple of things that have stemmed through the W North event over the course of the last week. One of the things that has come up constantly is, what advice would you give to working parents who may be out of the workforce for a number of years and are now looking to re-enter? And the concept of our workforce hasn't really shifted much when it comes to accommodating the needs of an evolving parent. That could be a mom or a dad, irrespective of the gender. What advice would you give to parents who are looking to re-enter the workforce?
Well, first of all, main thing you need to realize, it's going to be a change in everyone's life, not just yours. And you need to prepare everyone for it, whether it's the husband or the children or whatever. And they need to realize that they are part of a team. So that's what my daughters did with my kids, grandkids in the pandemic. They had to stop everyone coming into the house to help. We had somebody came in once a week to help clean. They were all a team. Everyone had to participate in the laundry and vacuuming and the whole thing. So when a mother or a father goes back to work and they haven't been working for 2 years, the kids also need to know that they're going to have to participate more. They're not king and queen. They're they're part of the family. And a lot of parents,
hard. It's hard for them to understand that.
Yeah, they think that they're like the king and the queen. What does the king want to have for dinner? I mean, seriously. And he doesn't like that, and then everybody rushes around and makes something else. So I think it's important for kids to realize that they're part of the team and that they need to pull their own weight. The earlier they can realize that, that's not being mean, by the way, that's being realistic, the happier they're going to be. Because when you work in a company, you're also part of a team. Yeah, and if they learn teamwork early on in the family, then I think that's going to help. So I would like to advise all these young mothers or fathers who are planning on a career change or want to go back to work or whatever, that they just need to talk about it in the family and then explain how that might impact everybody, and that they need the kids' support and the spouse support.
I love that. I love the fact that, you know, you're talking about the concepts of setting boundaries and responsibilities within the family dynamic, and that every single person is, again, held accountable, right? It goes back to the trick concept around independence, but respect and trust and collaboration. I think that family unit really needs to come together to support this re-entry into the workforce. As we talk a little bit about that, I mean, given your past experience and how wonderfully you've done with raising your daughters and your children, would you mind talking a little bit around sort of first of all, let's talk about the success that your daughters have faced in their careers. I won't do it justice, but that, and as you watch your daughters excel in their careers, what type of struggles are you noticing that they have to face in such roles, and what advice do you give them on how to navigate those sort of complexities around and being in a very senior leadership role or an entrepreneurial role? So let's get into that a little bit, because I think it's very important for us to tap into your role as a mother, your impact, and how you use the trick concepts and other concepts to raise such wonderful humans. And now how do you deal with sort of giving advice as they're navigating sort of more complex issues in their careers themselves?
So my daughters, for those of you that don't know who they are, my oldest daughter, Susan, is the CEO of YouTube. And my second daughter is a professor of pediatrics at UCSF Medical School, San Francisco. My third daughter is the founder and the CEO of 23andMe, the personal genetics company.
There's no shortage of, high-performing women in that household.
But I can just tell you, it's hard. These jobs are not easy. And it's important, to be able to take time off for yourself and make sure that you actually can do things that you want to do, because these are all consuming jobs, all three of them. And everybody, all these women that are in charge of their own companies, CEO or, COO or whatever they are, C-level executive, it's a pretty stressful situation. So you need to know that you have to take time off for yourself, whether it's on the weekend or you designate a certain afternoon or whatever, but you need to do that. Also, I advise everybody to exercise. I mean, seriously, exercise, we all talk about it as some way to lose weight, which is, I think, kind of ridiculous, because I think exercise is part of life and we should be exercising every day. So that's one strategy. The other is to eat well. I know that when you are stressed and behind, people tend to eat junk food. And so junk food makes you feel, yes, sick. That not only helps make you sick. So I think eating properly, exercising can be just taking a walk around the block, or, half a mile somewhere. You don't have to have fancy equipment. You don't have to have a Fitbit or Apple Watch to do it. You can just go out and walk.
Yeah. Get on your feet.
And then the third component is sleep. So there's three parts that I think are important: exercise, sleep, and food. And those are the keys, actually. If you can exercise every day, you can hopefully sleep well, at least 6 to 7 hours a night, and you can eat properly. You don't have to eat 3 meals a day either. If you eat 2 meals a day, but they should be good meals, not potato chips. I don't know if you heard the statistic, but in the pandemic, people were eating more potato chips than ever. The average was
I believe
6
it.
pounds of potato chips per person in the US.
Yeah. I
So
mean,
stop doing that because unhealthy.
um, and in terms of, let's talk about how you've transitioned as well. Your role as a mother, you've kind of gone from early childhood, raising 3 amazing women, to an empty nester. How did that impact your career journey, or did it?
Listen, I know a lot of people have an empty nester syndrome. I can tell you, I had a joyful empty nester syndrome. I was so happy to see them all go off to college. and but that's because they were also empowered. I trusted them. They trusted themselves. They had already had a lot of life skills practice. And I think for a parent that is, really connected to the child and does a lot for the child, for that child to go off to college or go off to work or wherever they're going it's very hard on the parent. And I mean, I think about how important it is for people to realize that the children are supposed to be going off. It's like a bird out of the nest. If they're going to stay in the nest the whole time, they won't learn to fly. And so they need to do that. And you as parents need to change your role so that you're supporting them when they need it, and you're not directing them, which unfortunately seems to happen a lot. There's a woman that I know in Palo Alto that wrote a book similar to mine called How to Raise an Adult. And her name's Julia Litcott Haynes. And she was dean of the freshmen at Stanford. And she wrote the book because so many parents were moving to Stanford when their child was accepted and living on the campus or nearby so they could help their child or tell them what to do. And she's like, when are they going to be on their own? When are they going to be adults? What is going on in America? And so, mine is How to Raise Successful People, has a similar message, but hers is targeting parents exactly, is like, let them be adults. So the empty nest syndrome, you have to remember, for them, it's part of life and it's an exciting moment. And so maybe, you should use that empty nest time to redecorate or to find another job or to, spend more time with your spouse or other things instead of worrying about them. So that's a long answer to your short question.
And did your career change a little bit once you went through the empty nester sort of transition?
My career, so I stayed home for 10 years and then I decided, well, first of all, we had to pay tuition for college. So it's like, it's either I go back to work or we don't have the money. So the reason I stayed home was because in the 1970s, when I stayed home, the culture was women stayed home. You just didn't work. You were seen as an odd duck, or like something was the matter with your husband, or something crazy. And so when I went back to work, everybody did have to adjust in the family because it was, I wasn't there to do all those things for them that they were accustomed to have. They had to be more independent than they were. They were already pretty independent, but it required a change. So all these changes in your life, they require adaptation from everyone in the family. It's
Right.
not just you. All of the whole family needs to adapt. And while everybody talks about change in a excited voice, or they very excited, oh, we're going to do this. In fact, if you look at statistics and data, you realize that most people don't like change or they're afraid of change.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's why women who are in abusive relationships tend to stay in those relationships because they're afraid of the change. So I suggest, of course, in those situations, for sure, they should get some support and get out.
Absolutely. When your kids were younger, so like I think you mentioned 10 years is the time that you were a stay-at-home mom and you transitioned. What was job search like for you then? And I guess the question that has come up quite time and time again is, what advice would you give to women who are looking to re-enter with young children at home? Um, and how do they look for the new models of working these days? You know, the part-time work and still be in professional roles. That whole notion of, can you make flex work while having a professional role?
Right. So I think my experience in the 1970s and 80s is very different than the experience today. It doesn't really relate. But I think in today's world, there's a lot of opportunity to find part-time work. There's all these resources online that help you, whatever you want to be or do, you can do it. There's, gig work. There's other possibilities. I mean, back in my era, you had to go to job fair. They don't have job fairs anymore. It's all online. Um, I think the most important thing is that the applicant, whoever wants to go back to work, should apply for jobs that they personally enjoy and like. Don't downplay yourself. Don't think you have the imposter syndrome or don't have the imposter syndrome. You're smarter and more capable than you think. I think most people are, and they accept positions that are beneath them because that's what they think about themselves. And so make out a list of things that you personally would like to do. Look online, do a search. And then if you get one of those jobs, then you have to prepare your family or your spouse or somebody in your family, whoever it is that you're living with, for how that's going to impact your daily life or their lives or your weekend activities or whatever. But you need to balance that. And as I said, you can go to Skyhive and see what your skill path is and see what skills you might have that you don't even know about. And there's so many opportunities. There's a group that I've been working with called Talent House that works with creatives. So if you're a creative person, you can sign up for Talent House and they match you with jobs. And, so maybe you always liked, creative activities, whatever they are, art, music, drawing, whatever. They have a lot of jobs that they can match you up with. So, but there's a lot of these companies out there these days, and that is just one of them. So I want to say that compared to what I faced in the 1970s and 80s, it's much easier today for women. In my era, I can tell you that most women didn't work, as I said, and I was a journalist. And as a woman journalist, I could not get into the San Francisco Press Club because they didn't accept women. It was like, and journalism was locked up. It was a man's field, man's profession. And then I couldn't get a credit card because women didn't have their own credit cards. I couldn't get a loan. I couldn't buy a car on my own. So we've come a long way. And I think most women don't realize it. And that's why my experience going back to work was very different, or it's very different than anybody would have today. Women can get credit cards and buy cars, buy their own houses. You're not discriminated against in the same way that it was.
Yeah, I think the times definitely changed, but I think the systemic issues continue to persist when it comes to if you have two candidates side by side, a male who has not taken a break to do the child rearing duties or be a stay-at-home mom versus a woman who has taken some time off. So the system seems to have still a very strong bias against those that still are very current experiences on their resume, haven't had a break. How would you suggest navigating some of those systemic biases where you can't even get a callback because, you've got this 5-year gap on your resume. I love that you said don't make concessions. Don't take jobs that you think you're too good for, or that are beneath you, or that don't match your skill sets. And obviously there are a lot of resources that you mentioned already. Are there tricks and tips that you would love to sort of maybe pass on to women that are struggling with those systemic biases, that they get weeded out before they can even get an interview, for example?
The number one thing, Steve Jobs said, the number one thing that people need to have to be successful, it's not, brains, and it's not all the other things that you might think. It's persistence. And, you just need to persist. If you get turned down by one group, you just continue and go to another group. I'm just telling you that I wish there'd be a simple answer. But as I said earlier, women are in a much better place today than they ever were before.
Yeah.
And you just need to hang on to that. And also the other thing is, if you get harassed, that's the other problem that happens. Women get harassed and then they get off track. They're like, oh my God, that person was so terrible. And they talk about harassment. And then instead of pursuing their goal, they pursue getting back at the harasser. What that's doing is eating up your energy in the wrong direction. So you need to be careful. Don't let that happen to you. If you're harassed, you can file a complaint or whatever, but don't let it overtake your life. That's not your purpose. Your purpose is to get a job that makes you feel appreciated and happy, and you do something that you care about in the world.
Absolutely. Just to wrap up our session today, Esther, what is the one takeaway you'd like working parents who are going through transitions to leave with from our session today?
I would say the number one takeaway is my trick philosophy, and that you are CEO of your life.
Love that. Love that. Take control and collaboration, and making sure that the family is on the same page at any given point in time. Love the dynamics of it all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks for your questions. Thanks for including me in your podcast, Revive. I'm very excited to be here. And I hope this was helpful to many women. And I'm really excited that women today are in many, many roles that they weren't in before, decades ago. And so keep up the good work.
I love that. Thank you so much, Esther, for wrapping up on such a powerful note. And Neha, thank you for leading the conversation. Both of you were fantastic, and we are so excited to have had you both here at W North Revive. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Amazing. Okay, for everybody who is watching, you can watch the replay of this and all of our other sessions online. We'll be in touch with more details. And thank you for watching us today. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Bye.